into the mods chat. Howdy. Alrighty, we are back. Today we have a video, well, a stream, not a video, a stream that will be full of Ableton's useful tips and tricks that we have discovered over the years of us producing and learning and all of this sort of stuff. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give a tip, and then I am going to show you Dread's screen over Discord, and he's going to give you a tip, and then we're going to go tit for tat and tip for tip, trick for trick, tip for tip, the battle of the tips. This doesn't count as a tip, but this is my absolute first tip to anybody. My absolute first tip is to start with some sort of template. I think it's better to start with, even just groups, like this. I just have things set, automatically, so I can just go straight into it. But going further into my tips, my first actual tip is what mode on Ableton's is very, very strong. Can't think of the words, but it's very strong for what it can do. Like, it's very powerful. So let me just grab like some sort of melody here. Or actually, let me grab a, I'm just trying to think of what I'm trying to grab right now. No, the melody is what I want. What am I talking about? Sorry. Alright, so let's just grab this one first off. I'm going to chuck it in here. So as you can see, I've got a template already, so I've already got my kind of stuff on it. But let's open this up and let's have a look at this. So as you go over here, usually it'll be off like that. You click over to the audio, so sometimes it might be minimized. Sometimes yours might look like this. So you click into the audio, click warps, change it from beats to complex pro if you want to keep it the same while pitching it. But if you want to do some cool things with it, you change it to a brick wall like so, leaving it on transients, and then you choose a value of what you want it to go to. So like half note, quarter note, eighth note, 16th, 32nd note, and transients. So when it says transient, it's meaning like all of these peaks, it's only going to hit when these peaks are really, really like the real high peaks. So it's a little bit harder. Whereas if you pick something like one quarter, so what I'll do is I'll play it. I'll get myself a little loop here. I'll duplicate this. Of course. My bad. Sorry. Rookie error. I should probably zoom in and make this easier on myself. There we go. So I'll just loop this. And we'll play it just to hear what it is like normal. It's a bit loud. Alright, so we got that already. But if we pull this down from 100, this is the value of how much it cuts. So the lower you bring it, the more it cuts. The higher you have it up, the less it cuts. So as you bring it down, you'll hear a change. And this can go for 1/8. So there's a lot you can do here. A lot of stuff you can play around with. The final thing that you can do with that kind of like the clipping with the preservation. Fuck, cannot speak today. Sorry. um, you can kind of. I'm pretty sure. No, you can't. All right. That's with arpeggiator. Don't worry. We can edit that out. All right, but yeah, that is my quick tip for trying to just quickly make a flow. So I mean, realistically, if I wanted to go like that, and then I change this one to 1/8, and then I'll go this one 1/4, and then the last one I'll go 1/2. All right, so we'll put this over some drums now, and all right, and that's my tip done. So I guess I'll pull up the Discord now, and Dredd can show me his first tip. I'll full screen this. Wait, let me pull this. Is it gonna? No, it's not. Oh, because this is full screen. That's why. There we go. All right.
All right, you ready?
All right. Yeah, we are ready, Dredd. Show us your first tip, bro.
So, Dread's first tip: grab a utility, right? Put it in here. Put it in a clip. Okay. We're gonna right click on our width on the utility. Gonna put it to mid side mode. Okay. Then we're gonna click it. If you're on PC, Control G to group it. If you're on Mac, it's Command G. Okay. We're gonna click this little button here that opens up the chain, and we're actually gonna duplicate this chain here. Okay. So this chain, we're gonna rename this to mid, and this chain we're gonna rename to side, and this one we're gonna move it to the left, and then this one we're gonna move it to the right. This is what I do when I'm mixing certain sounds that I want to hear, the mono signal, which is what this mid is doing, and the sides. Uh, and I do it to mix both these frequencies individually. So if we just grab like any bass, if I can actually type this bass. Perfect. So we take this bass here, right? Solo this track, and if we solo these mids, that will just give us the mids, right? And then these are the sides. And usually when I have, the basses that I like from my track, I then kind of go a little deeper with some EQ. So I like to put an EQ on the sides here. If you go to mode here, you click on the stereo, you go to MS for mid side, and then right where it says edit, this M, click it, and it'll take it the sides. And then we'll be able to see the frequency spectrum of our sides for the signal. Right? So if I go back to mid, it won't show anything, right? So we got to make sure we're inside. And then what I'll do, so like this sound is fine, but if we pretend that it's like pretty muddy, you can see here there's like a lot of junk down here, right? So we can cut this, right? I can basically fine tune how much I want coming through my sides, right? So if I have too much distortion coming through in my sides, this is a perfect way to kind of cut back and tame that. And you don't just have to like do a high pass here or any pass. Like you can use this like any other EQ. You can dip or even boost if you feel like you don't have enough highs or any frequency. Um, you can do all your fancy EQ stuff, but for your sides here. And then usually I don't put an EQ on the mono signal, but what I will do is put another EQ here and leave it on stereo. So if we listen to the full signal with this cut at, let's say, yeah, like 130, and let's say I don't want the sub that's in the sample in here, we can just cut to like 130. And then now we can add our own sub to this bass if we like it. But yeah, that's my first tip, a little bit of a mixing tip. I do this every time. I can even show an example here in this work in progress that I have. If I go to the main bass, I'm doing a mid-side EQ on a mid-side EQ on this, I believe. Mid-side EQ on this one. I know I had it on one of these. Okay, maybe I don't have it on these bases, but usually I do have it more often than not. Is it on this? No, it's on this. Okay, so this shot, right? It has the easy mid-side EQ right here. If I open it up, same thing, right? Like you can see one signal is on side, one signal is on mid. Usually I boost the mid signal as well. Um because I at least for my mixes, I want the mono signal on like elements in my drop to be a little bit louder than the sides. Because that's where like a bigger majority of my beef will come from in my drops. Um and then this is also tameable. Sometimes you want to turn this down depending on the sounds that you have. And then tame it again with the EQ. But yeah, that's my first tip. Mid side mixing.
Fuck yeah. That was a good tip, bro. All right. Let's bring it over to back over to my Ableton. And
Hey Hollow, do you wanna like do a screen share so I can like follow along too?
oh yeah, sure.
Because like I had the stream open, I thought like that'd be fine, but it's like delayed
Delayed.
by like
Yeah.
20, like it's almost like 20 seconds or something like that. So it's like
Yeah,
I'm
for
not able
sure.
to layer it, you know. But yeah, if you could stream what you're doing so I can
Yeah, for sure.
follow along too.
There you go. That should work for you, right? Beauty.
Yes, sir.
All right. So
It's so bright.
yeah, sorry. I need I need to actually fix my thing.
Bro, I'm like in dark mode. Everyone's chilling in mine. They go to hollows. It's so bright.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I'll quickly change
No,
it.
it's all good, man.
Wait, look and feel. There we go. Oh, that's kind of cool. Cool. Not a huge fan of the green, but it is what it is. It's better. All right. So my second tip is not to change your theme on Ableton. My second tip is reverb on guns, and how effective you can, like how much you can boost guns by using reverb, and how to use it effectively. So what I'll do here is I'll just grab a quick sample. Let's grab the Kaifu. Let's go. Need something that's actually, no, you know what I'm going to do? Because this can lead into my next one later. I'll go off the same sound. Alright, cool. So let's get this sound here. Why did I do that? Same thing. I'm just gonna quickly just jot down a gun flow. Alright, let's just go quarter notes because it's easier. Alright, so there's two ways of doing this. I do both of these ways like quite often, but projects will change from time to time. So let's just play the sound now and we'll hear it as is. Alright, so we got that, yeah? So this is our first port of call is send and return tracks. Some people like them, some people don't. This is a tip that I will use sometimes just to boost volume. Now, these are the settings I use. I like to have a low size, a short decay, so it's not going for ages. I don't want the size all the way down. I want it to have some beef to it, like some, room. And the decay, obviously, you don't want the tail going for fucking years. So you want, like a short decay, something that's going to beef it up and, just make it a little bit bigger than what it currently is. Dry wet is a huge thing that gets looked over in like a lot of Ableton things. Dry wet, there is, certain parameters that if you go over, they don't do anything. So like from 50 to 99, they're kind of essentially the same thing. Sorry, over 50, so 51% to 99%, they're kind of essentially almost the same wetness. They don't really add that much. Whereas from 0 to 50 is like a huge exponential curve that like you can notice the whole way. So I usually try and stick between 16% and 50% unless I want it fully on, and then that way I'll have it on 100%. But yeah, so and the density on high. Other than that, I don't change anything else. And that's in the send and return track. So you'll get these little things here. So to add a send and return track, you left click and then insert return track, or you can do Command Shift T is the shortcut. Oh, thank you.
No, can you open it?
Oh.
It's mine.
Sorry, girlfriend just walked in. Love, can you take her out? And close the door?
Well, you can't just ignore her.
Yeah, but I'm streaming right now, so.
Yeah, but you need to pay attention to her.
Alright, anyway, back to what I was saying. So with the center return track, once you add it in, you get your level down here. And basically it works like the meter on your mixer here. So we'll increase it slowly and then you'll hear the difference. So that's one way you can do it. The other way that I like to do, and I do this a lot, is using hybrid reverbs. The specific one I use is Modest Corner. This one kind of is like a personal touch that I use on all of my tracks. Hybrid reverbs are great. They also add tonality as well as your, your actual reverb. It's actually a convolution reverb. It's just fucking Ableton calling it a hybrid reverb, but yeah. Anyway, so I usually change it to convolution from whatever the setting is. I'm pretty sure it's on parallel. So I change this convolution, pull the decay back again. So this is what I was talking about, where you want that short decay, and the size, the same thing again. Turn the vintage off. Vintage adds essentially some sort of like erosion effect. I'm not a huge fan of it. I think it adds a little too much white noise. But some people are a fan of it. I don't like it. And again, same thing, dry wet, down to 50% or lower. I usually start with 50%, but for this, I'm just going to start it around 15% and work my way up if I need more. Yeah, so I'll do a before and an after. So reverbs are really good for that essence of, just adding that little bit of extra room. Obviously you can play with, your parameters to fill up the space as needed. But yeah. And there you go. That's fucking pretty much it. You can do the same with normal reverb as well, by changing the size down again, same thing. So if I turn this off, I'll pull the decay. I'll leave the decay at what it is. I'll change the density to high, and I'll just play with the dry wet. And then obviously you've got, your things here. You can shape your the sound, shape how you want it. But yeah. Play around with your parameters, see what you get. Experimentation is your friend in this instance. All sounds are different. Nothing will ever exactly translate over from project to project, because unless you're using the same sounds and you're going for the exact same kind of style and song and everything like that, 9 times out of 10, your parameters are always going to be different slightly in some way or another. And yeah, it just doesn't exactly translate over. Otherwise, I'd sit here and be like, do this to this percentage, do this to this percent, do this to this number, and you just won't learn anything. Whereas if I show you the method and then the tools, you can take the tools and go from there. And that is my second tip. So let's bounce back over to the Discord and we'll see Dread's tip.
All right. So my second tip is going to be on parallel processing. So let's take another rhythm bass. This one. And let's just give this a listen. There's a little rhythm bass. All right. So let's say I wanted more reverb on it, but I don't want to lose like the beef of the original sound. So I like, just as Hollow was showing, convolution reverb is really nice. I have a little stock rack that I've made that will kind of showcase what this is about to do. So this chain, okay, just like we did before with the utility, you can do this with anything. Here, I'll actually use it with a convolver gun. So anytime you have an audio effect like this, or if it's vocoder or anything, right? Control G and create a group. And when I say we're making a dry wet, right click in here, create chain. Okay, this signal has nothing in it. This is just the original sound going into the track, routed into this chain, which has nothing in it. So this should be the original sound if I solo it. Right? Now this one has the convolver gun on it, right? So same idea, but this rack over here has a convolver gun preset that I like to use, which is bigger spaces, shimmering sky. And there's a little EQ in here that I use to cut to make sure the reverb I'm getting is like this nice, like clean reverb. But this chain is the dry chain. So again, it's just the original signal that we've already heard. And then this one is a reverb chain. So this would be considered our wet. So we would rename this. This is the wet. And this is the dry. So dry, always remember that the dry is just the unaffected sound in your signal chain, and the wet is the affected one. So if we listen to them together, right, you can hear both of them. Now, sometimes I would tame it a bit, so like maybe that's too loud here. But that could add a nice layer to this bass while it's playing in your drop, right? Gives it that wet feeling. And yeah, that's a quick tip from Dread: parallel processing, dry and wet signals. Your wet signal can also be anything. It doesn't have to be reverb. A wet signal is just anything that has an effect on it. It's considered wet if it had a vocoder. It's considered wet if you did literally anything that the dry signal, that affects the dry signal, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a quick Dread tip number 2.
That's an awesome tip. I'm just quickly sending a message to the general chat of Discord. Alright, so let's bring it back over to the live. And my third trick is my secret sauce to getting fucking crunch. And when I say crunch, I mean crunch, baby. So, the most important thing to getting that crunch that you need is clipping. Now, to clip, you have to clip your guns that you're making with your sub in the same group. So, because I made these guns with an audio track, or with an audio sample, I've got these, because I keep them separate to keep organized. So all I had to do was just minimize this group and chuck it into the same group where there is a clipper. Don't ask me why I have 2 clippers here. I think it was just for swapping around depending on, Anyway, so what you do is you get yourself your sub that you're using, and let's just go with this. My dog, dude. So I like to pick a note, something like, D as it hits hard. That's just a personal preference though. You don't have to. There's no rules into what you pick for this. Yeah. So once you get your sub down, that is literally it. You put a clipper in the group, sub together, and then if you need to, you crank your clipper. So now if I crank this clipper, and that is all you do to get your basis of like crunch, and that is my quick tip for getting sub crunch with your guns. Yeah.
Cool.
I'll take it back over to Discord for Dread's next tip.
All right, so the third tip I have is one that I definitely don't see a lot of people doing often, and this one is super helpful, especially for Ableton. I'm not too sure if FL Studio or Logic have anything similar, but in Ableton, it's very easy to save groups to your user library to use for a later date. So let's say you have a bunch of basses here, and you have like some basses here, and this is like an amazing flow, right? It's the best flow you've ever made.
Oh my god.
Select these and Control G, right? And you create this group. And let's say we wanted to put like an OTT on it and some reverb,
The source.
right? And let's say on this you want a vocoder for whatever reason. Okay. So now we have like our elements together, right? We have multiple tracks that have effects on them. So like this got a vocoder on it, and this has an OTT. The group has its own effects as well. If you like this, right, you can go over to your user library. You can have all these folders and stuff. You can drag and drop this into your user library. So I'll do save it, right, and then you're in a new project where this is an empty space, right? You can drag this back in to a new project, and it saves everything that you've done. It'll save like the OTT and the reverb we put on it. It'll save the effects. It saves everything, right?
Even the
and it doesn't just have to
parameters?
be basses. Like, say again.
Even the parameters that you set?
Yeah, on the effects, yes. So like
Wow, that's actually
if
cool.
the
I didn't even know
if the
that.
OT you yeah, tips for Hollow too, man. He's
Dude,
paying
this
attention
is...
now.
Yeah,
Class is in session.
dude.
All right. So like yeah, so like these were I dragged these in stock, but let's say the OTT was like minus 24 down. That's the time was down. The amount is I don't know at a random number. This vocoder formants are like up, depth is down. We draw this like little U shape or whatever,
Yeah,
and we drag this over here. We can save it again,
yeah.
overwrite it, okay? And if your parameters are changed, you can drag this in. It saves every minute detail that we adjusted.
Wow. That is
So if
awesome.
you are having some sort of writer's block or you're trying to come up with a new song and maybe you come up with something that you like and you want to save it and use it for later in a new project when you're feeling inspired, you can do that. So like I did that once, for instance.
That is
Um,
so fucking
I
smart, Bear.
yeah, I did a melodic thing and I couldn't figure out really how to continue it at the time that I made it, but I was like working on another project and I was like I need something melodic. And I was like, well, what about that thing I made that I saved? Like save everything you're
Don't close
doing,
that door.
especially if you like it. So if I needed an intro, I now have one because I saved it. So I dragged this in, and now it saved everything I did. This whole group, this melody group, has a little EQ, clipping it. This has labs on it. So this is the labs is the instrument I'm using. It saved the labs preset, the fresh air, plugin I put on it, utility, my Easy Clean reverb rack that I've showed already. Probably one of my favorite racks that I use, EQ clipping, right? Like it saved everything. And if I give it a play, I solo it here.
Why do I recognize this?
Right?
Fuck yeah.
If you need you need to save things because it will save you so much time. And another thing to show that I just remembered, if you have any automations in the track, saving the group will save those automations as well. Literally, it saves everything when you drag your
That's
tracks
awesome.
over. So yeah, and then you can obviously adjust this if you want.
That's fucking
I had
sick.
made the track that I used this in. I had removed this layer and I had messed with the automation and stuff to fit uh with the track that I had finished going forward with it. But yes, save everything.
Yeah.
That's dread tip number 3 right there.
Fuck yeah. All right. So we'll take it back over to Ableton. So we've got ourselves somewhat of a little uh, template kind of thing here, or like little project going on. So I'm going to continue off of what we've already set. So these here, these are gunshots. To me, they sound a little plain. They could use with some sort of tonality. So to achieve that, I like to use a thing called Corpus. Corpus is a really, really great Ableton stock plugin, and there's multiple different modes. So just from the get-go, there's instant tonality there. I'm not a huge fan of Beam. Some people are. I like to stick around the plate, pipe, and tube kind of area. Sometimes membrane. I won't really go anywhere else. But plate is usually where I stick. I'll change it to high as well. And obviously you tune here. The good thing with the tune is that it actually shows you the note for the cent tone value. I don't know what, but
Yeah, your scent tone,
yeah,
I think is what that is.
yeah. So if let's just leave this at 0. So obviously you got your dot here, which will control your decay and your material. So dragging it down and into the corner will give you the least amount of decay, the least amount of material, and pretty much around the 4 corners you'll figure it out what they do. So least amount of material, most amount of decay, most amount of material, most amount of decay, least amount of decay, most amount of material, and least amount of material, least amount of decay. Then you just find yourself a sweet spot. I usually kind of sit around here. And then you play around with this. So let's automate this rather than just picking one tone. So it will change through. Let's go. He's just gonna let me do my thing? No. Oh my god, dude. My mouse is dying on me right now. Hello? Bro, what? I'm just dragging up and down. Why are you doing this crazy thing? E2. Reverse like that. And let's go right down to this one. We'll go D1. And then we'll bring these right up. So let's go. So there's different values you can add. Obviously, you can highlight whole sections and slide them up. And then you can change the certain values like the brightness, the inharmonics of it. The ratio. And then the hit rate. You can also control certain things like the LFO, so the shape that it'll do. Down, and then your random. But yeah, that's pretty much what you can do with Corpus essentially alone. So, you know, if we were to, let me just put this back to square, and I'll just dial back the amount, and we'll do an A and B difference just to quickly refer again. So there's a lot you can do with Corpus, and there's no limitations really to, you know, what you can do. I think it's really cool. It's a cool plugin. But yeah, that's my tip from your boy. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So let's go back over to Discord, and we'll see Dread's next tip.
All right. So, tip number 4. So let's say you have some basses. We're gonna keep revisiting all the rhythm basses because they're just juicy examples.
Rhythm. Come on, bro. It's not called rhythm anymore. It's trench.
Come listen to my trench, bruh. Yeah, so okay, let's say you have a bass that you've designed, you like it, but you're struggling on the flow, right? You don't know how you want to go with it, or maybe you're trying some stuff like you're chopping it up and doing like 8th notes or 16th notes, and it doesn't feel right. One thing that I like to do when I have it is I get a sub to go with it. So I have this sub that I've made, and let's just match this on here. So we have our bass. Let me solo it real quick. So we've tried a bunch of different flows and it doesn't work, but we haven't really put the sub with it yet. Something that I always do when starting drops is I just quarter note the sound that I have. Now, like in rhythm, there's like obviously a lot of quarter note, and there's just a lot of quarter note in dubstep in general. But it's good to always start your sound with quarter note. There shouldn't be like a negative stigma towards quarter notes. Like obviously, at times they can be boring, but if you have the right sounds or if the song calls for it, quarter notes can still always hit really good. But start with just quarter notes with the sound you have, and take a sub and quarter note the sub with it to see if it is gonna sound right. Right? Something like that. And then I don't know, keep going with it, see if it's got a nice feeling. Right? But now with this is like a good way to guarantee if the sound you have sounds good with the sub you have. Maybe this sound could get cut back a bit because there's like a delay to it, and the transient of the sub there is kind of like taking up a lot of that. So like again, this is why I do it like this, is to really monitor like what's actually going on grid here. So that already sounds like a lot better than what we originally had with it sort of like fading in the way it was. After I hit this sort of phase, like, okay, I have this lined up the way I want it, then I start crafting a more interesting flow. Like this could still work out fine. But let's say I just want to make it more interesting than quarter note. So like we can have an eighth note there, and we could probably do something like this, or like cut it up like this and have the sub follow along with it. So like we can cut this back to like let it breathe like this, and then do that too. There we go. So now let's hear what that sounds like. So like that's a little more interesting than quarter note, and we can even
It's got a
do
bit more
something else
swing.
here. Like, yeah, we can do this as well. And then here's here's another quick tip on structure, right? So this is two bars, right? From 9 to 11. And this is actually what you would consider being our A section of our drop here, right? So if we listen to it again, we can feel where it's supposed to hit again. So again, we kind of want to hear something similar. All right, so let's play this. So in here, this is actually going to be considered our B because we're going to make a change to it here, right? So we'll listen to it again, and you can kind of feel where you think the change should come in. At least for me and my producing, when I do this kind of structure as well,
Sorry, bro.
I can always feel like in my chest where exactly I want the change to be. So like right here is where I'm gonna start making some changes. So we'll listen through. Do something like this, and maybe we can select these. So if you click on an audio sample on the grid here, right, you left click it. If you hold down Shift and click over here, you multi-select. Here's another quick tip from Dread. And when you select all these audio samples, you can warp them all at the same exact time. And you can change their warp mode at the same exact time and change their semitones at the same exact time with all of them selected. That's something I do a lot. We're going to change these to complex. In this one, I'm just going to pitch down 1. And I'm going to pitch this down like 4. And now let's see how that sounds. Right, now we have like this little change. So this change over here is what gives it the B portion of the structure, right? And then we would repeat our A. And then I will copy over our B and probably make another change here. We can probably do something like this, that, and then maybe at like this half bar point here, we can grab a glitch. Sure. This, maybe warp it, fit the space. Another quick tip: if you hold down Shift and you like hover over the edge of the audio clip here, you can stretch this, and this is effectively changed into BPM. You can also do the same thing down here with finer control. But yeah, now if we play this, it'll have like this A, B, A again, which is exactly the same as, you know, the A, right? Hence why it's called A. And then this is actually going to be C because we did something different from B. So if we play this, it should feel right in the structure. Right. And then if you loop this and just keep playing it and keep making adjustments to it to fit. This is very crude of an example of an ABAC structure, but this is like definitely helpful for everyone who isn't familiar with the structure or how to put that together. This is like an easy way to do it, but I can show an example because I have a track actually up right now of ABAC in like a stronger context. But if I open up this, all these bases and stuff, you can kind of see I'm doing the same thing here. So this is a 1 bar A, whereas the last example it was 2 bars there. But it can be like 1 bar, 2 bar, or whatever the flow is calling for. But this 1 bar is A, the second bars are B, A again, and then the last bar is C. So I'll play through this. Right? You get the idea. So this, if I play this A and A, it should sound exactly the same. Right, they're exactly the same. And the reason I do that and why a lot of producers do that is music captivating the way it is because of its repetition. You want to hear certain things more than just once. If I changed this every single bar, it would be too chaotic, too hard to follow, and it just wouldn't sit right. Now, if that's what you're trying to do, then go for it. But for this genre, rhythm tear out, right, dubstep, an ABAC structure is a very strong structure, and I suggest that a lot of people, especially beginners, structure their tracks with ABAC. And then when you really get an understanding of an ABAC structure, branch out a bit. Try doing like an AABC, or ABAB, right? Like there are some rhythm tracks that are very emphasize on repetition, and that's fine because you can create the best ABAB rhythm track on planet Earth, and people will still love that shit, right? But ABAC is a good place to start because it also helps you know when you want to put in like fills. So like this C section here is like there's like none of the basses we've heard before even in it. It's kind of like a 1 bar turnaround, but it's a C because it's different than what we've heard before, right? And that's this structure. Now if we go on to the next 4 bars, I kind of expand upon the ABAC and it becomes a 2 bar ABAC, if that makes sense. So this whole section, this 2 bar section, which was an A and then a B, now also just becomes one big A over here because we hear it again. And then we have just a B, which is a 2 bar section. And then we start over with a brand new A, a new B, a new A, and a new C. And I did that to kind of keep the track like moving with its own momentum. So I'll play these 16 bars and I'll see if you can spot like the ABAC structure that's in it. But I am being a little experimental with the ABAC, trying to make it stand out from other ABAC tracks. But I will give this a play and you just try to identify the ABAC structure with your ear alone. Right?
Cheerio.
So, yeah, and it should feel nice. Like the repetition that I have in here glues it together, so nothing is lost. The idea plays all the way throughout, where we understand we're listening to the same track, and I continue to do that for the next 16 bars. But I'm changing it up here and there, but you kind of get the idea of like having a strong structure, and that's basically how I start drops in general, right? If we go back to my first point, is you just get a bass, right? If you're sound designing, you got a bass you like, just try it in quarter notes with a sub to see if the sound you have sounds right with the sub. Fix any issues you might have, like okay, the sub's not in key, so put the sub in key with the track or with the basses that you have, um, and set it up right. And then once you have it layered the way you want it, just like how I did, make the flow more interesting. If you want to make the flow more interesting, or just whatever you want it to be. Um, if you like the quarter notes, like if it's a sound that sounds really good, like you feel that it's meant to be a quarter note flow with that bass, at least for your A, and then you switch it up for your B, and then you hit them with the quarter note again for the A, and then for your C, do something different you haven't done yet, right? Kind of like your wow factor of the flow, or just or just to end your phrasing, which again is why I emphasize using ABACs, because it really helps with knowing your phrasing, because you can feel like it's a very strong phrase ender to have a turnaround like what I do. Like that we're moving into the next phrase, which kind of repeats like what we've had, um, but it glues everything together. But yeah, definitely, I would say start tracks like that, because you can crank them out pretty fast if you get that down, because you can end up with a nice 32 bar drop, really quickly. And if you're struggling on where to go to keep it interesting, so like this whole section, right? So this 8 bar section can be split into an A, B, A, C, right? First 2 bars A, second 2 bars is a B, next 2 bars is A again. Then we have C, right? And now you're like, well, do I repeat it again over here? Well, what I would do is I would take the first A that we had and copy paste it over here, which is what I did, and just make a slight variation to it. And then continue with an ABAC structure again, which is what I did. So I made a new A, which was captivating compared to like the first A, right? Like it felt like an evolution of the first A that we had. It really had that like sort of B drop feeling to it. So that's what I did, and then I just then copied basically this new A over to the B section and made slight variations so that we can call this B, and then hit them with A again, and then copy it over and do a little C section. Sometimes I use the same turnarounds at some of these phrases, and that's totally fine. You could go crazy with it, and at the end of every ABAC phrase, you do a unique turnaround every time. But sometimes you want to repeat some of your turnarounds because one, it'll save you time, because sometimes if you go too crazy with your turnarounds, um, like it gets a little chaotic in its own way as well. So sometimes I like to repeat my turnarounds for some of these phrases, and then you can kind of glue the whole thing together. And if you have 32 bars, what I do then is when you're ready to make your second drop, I start down from where we were at. I copy over the first A and I just rearrange it again and do that again over here. Some tracks call for far more drastic variation. So sometimes you might get to your B drop and your second drop, and you might want to add new sounds that we haven't heard before and keep evolving the track, keep ramping it up, keep giving the listener this constant build up to your finale, your outro, right? But yeah, that is quick flow tips and like just structure with Dread right there.
Alright.
I do that with every track. Like this, and you crank them out fast. I did this one. It's not completely finished yet, but the idea is here, and I'd say it took me about like a day and a half to kind of get where it is, if that, like a day. Um, structure no doing an ABAC structure like this, you can crank songs out fast, and the faster you're putting out ideas on the grid and flexing your brain muscles, the quicker you're going to get better. But yeah, there we go. That's it for me on
Yeah.
this tip, or multiple tips
Yeah.
even.
There's like 60
So yeah,
tips,
I'll pass it over to Hollow then.
All right. So my next tip is a bit more. I might combine these two. Sorry, I was getting a call then.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you're getting a call, bud.
uh,
The big man is important.
yeah. All right. I'll combine these two together. Because this is kind of, as the same thing. All right. So the next thing, the next quick tip I have is gun layering. How to layer guns effectively to achieve, a unique sound. So let's continue off of what we've built already. Now gun layering for me is usually broken down to a matter of maybe 3, sometimes 4 layers. And it depends on how you kind of view it. So the way I view it is you build a gun with layers that use the entire frequency spectrum. So you've got your low end, you've got your low mid, you've got your mid high, and then your high. Depending on how you layer this, also you can, like with what Dredd was saying, with the mid-side EQ, you can also layer these into, certain areas inside of a 3D like space. So, you've got one part of your gun that's really in your face that you can hear prominently, and then everything else is around it, accompanying it. So we'll start with this as a base. The perk here we've got. Alright, so we've got that. My low is going to be my sub. So we've actually got 2 layers. Now, the next way you can look at layering guns after this is layering them in, try like breaking up the actual wave, kind of from start to finish. So at the start of the wave, you've got what you call the transient, which is what we've got here. We've got this pluck. I'm actually going to make this pluck a little bit more plucky, so it's more of a transient. Then you want to have like more of a body where most of the sound is coming from, usually some sort of tonal layer or something like that. And then you're going to have what you call like a reverb layer. So something that's just going to fill off the tail and fill it from that note to the next note. But yeah, so we got this here. I'm just going to turn off my automation real quick. I'm just going to quickly make these plucks a little bit pluckier. Following the same trick that I was talking about before. I also want to use a frequency shifter just real quick to just lower this pitch, just for the sake of this tutorial thing. So. Alright, so there we go. We got that. So that's going to be our pluck layer. also gonna turn down my Alright, cool. So we've got the pluck layer. So now we're gonna get a body layer. I'm just gonna use this something from the sample pack just to Alright, so this is kind of cool. I don't know, that's probably better to work. Alright, so we'll get something here. We'll just layer this. Just bring these fades in, copy that over 3 times. Delete the tail, it's unnecessary rubbish. And let's just get this over. And now you've got a new layer to mix in, so let's mix this in. So we've got a lot of tonality kind of thing coming. So now let's get ourselves a reverb layer. Yeah, that'll work. Alright, cool. So same thing again. We're just going to pull this in, layer this up real quick. Alright, and we're going to mix this layer in as well. So this is where I was talking about your mid-side EQ. So after you've done that, we'll just go into the mid-side EQ here. I'll grab myself a M stereoscope. It's a free plugin you can get from Melda Productions. You can get a whole bundle of free plugins on their website. This is a really, really good stereoscope, so oscilloscope and metering plugin that I use to just essentially tell me the position that it's in the stereo field. So I like to use the width on the side here, and as you can see there's a percentage value. So I'm just going to solo this one out. So this is for this one here. As you can see it's sitting around 66, so it's kind of in the middle of being all the way stereo and all the way mono. So let's go bring it in on the mid side EQ. So just bring it in. And as you can see, it drops, and you can hear it. And this is how you can train your ears to how to mix in like a 3D space. So you know, when you play with these kind of parameters and solo them, and you can hear the differences, you learn to hear what the difference between mono and stereo signal is, and it's actually very easy to train your ears for these kinds of things. So for me, I want the transient right in my face. I really want to hear it. So I'm also going to turn this up a bit, the transient, and I'm going to have it really mono. So let's hear it now. Alright, so now we've got that one. Let's go into the next one here. Same thing. Mid bass EQ rack. So this one's a bit more stereo. One sitting around here, and then let's do the final one. Same thing again. Alright, so That's, you know, our gun layers. We can take it a step further, and this is where blending my next tip in with this one makes it easier. You can use vocals to back your flow of, you know, your drums or your synths. So usually what you would do is I usually would get myself like, you know, just a basic shout, like a hey or something like that. Hey! 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 Alright, so that's good. And I'll chuck this one on the snare. And so every time the snare hits, you're going to hear this vocal, and it's going to be reverbed and all of this kind of stuff. It's going to fill up a lot of the space that's kind of empty in between. And so what we can do as well is, let's just get rid of these ones in the middle, and let's make it a quarter note tune again. So we start off with the triplets as a duo, and we'll just go quarter notes just for now, just to see how this feels like the space with how it is. Alright, so let's play from the top. And yeah, so you can use these to fill out, you know, a lot of space in a mix, and it helps so much. Adds bounce, it adds, you know, swing, it adds a lot of stuff. You can take it further by processing your, you know, your sounds, your vocals that you add. So you can add things like an erosion, reverbs, decays like this. So I've got myself a rack here that I'm using. And so now you've got all of a sudden a full mix. And now because you've already heard that, your ear automatically wants to hear that again. So that's how you know that it's, you know, good to fit. Your ear automatically wants to hear something, put it in there. Yeah, that's my tip of how to lay guns, and you know, how to meter them and stuff, how to level them properly, and how to correctly mix them in. Because yeah, you know, all in all, you can just go in there and slap on, you know, all your effects and stuff like that. I just realized that this is probably not going to be as clean as it should be because EQ8 isn't powerful enough alone. That's another thing I should say. You need to have more than one EQ8 if you wanted to do, you know, a cut of something, especially if there's a lot of power going into it that's boosting it. Oh wow, I am so sorry guys, fuck me. I've been showing you this in mono this whole fucking time. Ha rip. Here we go.
Rookie mistake, buddy. Rookie mistake.
Absolute rookie mistake. I was like, why does this still sound mono? Like, I've been adding stereo and it still sounds mono. But yeah, now it's going to sound very stereo. You're going to hear a completely different track. And so with gun layering, you know, obviously you can take it further. You know, you don't always have to layer every gun. You know, you can go... sorry, I'm just quickly just adding this. Alright, so this is an example of how you can layer guns even further. And that's essentially, you know, how I would make my tracks. Even further, add one last thing to really just add that swing and flow. This is actually no. Let's do good sample selection. Let's put this on grid. We get some reverb on it. I'll just cheat real quick because this is. Wait, where is it? Let's put this up here where I grab all the time. And I'm just gonna cheat real quick and add this in here. Turn the time down. And that's how you layer guns and how to use vocals to add support. And got yourself a fucking pretty fire drop if you're doing all of these things. It's not actually that hard to create dynamics and, you know, create these soundscapes if you do them right. It's all about layering correctly. Don't overdo, you know, the layering. Like, this would sound shit if, to be honest, this would sound shit if all of these guns were doing this pattern. It would be way too cluttered. There'd be too much going on. There's too much fighting for each other to be heard. So you got to layer correctly. And that's going to wrap up my 2 tips. Let's drag it over to Dread.
Yep, I got one final tip, and then
Yeah, I got
that's
one
it
after
for
you,
me.
and then I'm done.
But yeah, my final tip is metering and visualizing your mix. So on my master, I have a little mastering rack that I have. Aside from like the EQs and stuff and the clippers, we have some stuff that shows visual shit. So first I have this Pro L, which is gonna show me how much it's gonna dip some frequencies that are going above 0 dB here, which would cause clipping, which wouldn't sound nice. So this is just kind of taking away some elements that are too harsh for the listener. So if I play my drop here, we'll see it working. So you see all these like red, you know, spikes that dip down. It's basically just taking out frequencies that are going above here. And this is like a decent look for your Pro L if you have this anyways. If you don't have like something like this, Ableton comes with its own limiter. I just don't know. I've never personally used it, but it effectively will do the same thing. It just doesn't show you as much as what the Fab filter does. So it's a good pickup. Not to mention there's a lot of different mixing options here, like aggressive and tight for EDM or punchy or transient or like any of these for your different genres and stuff. Like eventually for this song, I would probably end up changing it to the aggressive and tight one because I like to use that one. Another one is having some sort of luff meter. So I use Swiss Army meter. It's an Ableton Max for Live that you can get. I prefer it because it sits right here and I can just see it without actually having to open up anything like the Fab filter. But if you can't get it, or if you're on FL or something like that, and it doesn't have like its own built-in thing or whatever, you can get a free VST called You Lean Loudness. It's like this, and it'll also give you the same LUF readings as what the Swiss Army meter will. So I'll play this. You can look at the Swiss Army and this. They should effectively be the same. Right? So we get to see how loud our song is LUF wise. This is also really effective as well when you have a reference track, which I also, a little quick tip, I think, especially for beginners, have reference tracks. Download your favorite song or someone that inspires you to make music, right? So, for example, someone that I always am referencing is Muerte. I reference his tracks quite often, and I try to get my tracks and certain elements of my tracks to be like loud like his or wide like his, because it's good to reference it. Like if his track is hitting -3 lufs, um, I should aim to try to get that loud without getting too muddy or too clipped, depending on the kind of mix and like just the sound selection and all that stuff kind of compiling together in your project. But LUF meters are good because if I didn't have them and I wasn't showing you this, like you could, if you had a good ear, you could probably guess it's around the -3 to -2 range. But you know, it's good to always know exactly, especially if you have like a lot of fluctuations. You can fix certain sections, like some of these fill sections, maybe they're a little too loud. Maybe these turnarounds or fill sections should be quieter, so when our phrase starts again, it has more of a punch to it because it's louder uh, than the turnaround, right? So that would be one thing you'd use a LUF meter for, aside from just seeing how loud your whole track is, right? Or if your intro or your build, like this is a common one that happens a lot, is sometimes people's builds are louder than the drops that come in, um, which, unless you're doing it on purpose, is sometimes, like most of the time, just a no-no, because you lose impact on your drop. Your drop is supposed to be the star of the track for dubstep or rhythm or tear out, whatever, right? It's where you have the most fun producing and where you have the most fun listening. Um, so if your build is louder than your drop just isn't gonna hit right. And if you're planning on sending to like labels, right, or touring artists to play your tracks out, this is something they're gonna definitely hit you on. They're gonna be like, bro, build too loud, drop too quiet, like in comparison, fix it, right? So that's another reason to have a LUF meter, so you can like just visually see what's going on. And if you're suffering from like a lot of ear fatigue, like I should have my mix down a bit while working on tracks. I have a bad habit of not doing it, so I'm blowing my ears out more often than I should. So having ear fatigue is a thing that happens quite often with me. So I use my visualization here for my LUFs to see what's going on. Next, I have a spectrum analyzer. You could also have something like Span here, which is really good. I just don't use it as often. But here's Span. It is fucking a huge ass window. There you go. And the spectrum analyzer and a Span are effectively going to show you the same thing. Same with this reference I have here. It's just an EQ with everything turned off, but we can still kind of see our frequency spectrum here. But I'll play the track and you'll see how, like, what the mix looks like on the frequency spectrum. So yeah, there we go. And like just looking at these, I can see like in this range here, I have like maybe a little bit too much of a buildup on some of those frequencies that I can fix, right? And this is why we visualize it, because with my ears, like it's like the fill section sounded fine to me. But you can see it down here. Like, yeah, I should probably tame it a bit. And that's what, visually seeing it does. It's helpful to see these things. And then the very last thing I have is an imager. This is also, I believe, this one, like Imager 2, that I'm using here. I believe it's free.
Yeah, it is.
But you have to still authorize it via email. At least I had to back when I got this. Because if you don't, what happens is if you have a VSC and demo version, it's going to like interfere with your audio. So like this one, I believe, just mutes your whole master for like a few seconds if you're using the demo version. Now, if for some reason you don't want to activate it, you can still turn this on and look at your stereo image, which is what this is. This is a stereo image. This is, your right pan. This is how close you are to mono, and then this is your left, and like covering this whole thing is that entire sort of 360 space that you feel in your headphones. But yeah, like having like the demo version, you can just turn this on real quick, listen, and just turn it off if you want. But I suggest grabbing it. I suggest everyone get some sort of stereo imager, and this one is the only one you'll probably ever need. So let me play my track and I'll show you like what this looks like here. So we can see I'm filling up everything. The whole stereo image is filled with all kinds of, nice juice here. And then we can see that the mono signal is still slightly stronger than our stereo image. And that's because the sub is always in mono, which, unless you're trying to do something creative or artistic or experimental or whatever, I highly suggest just having utility on like a bass mono or just mono. Like, and I have it at multiple stages too, because I'm just picky about it. Like bass mono, mono, and then even on the master, all the way over here, I have a utility on bass mono, just to make sure that everything as it goes through all these groups all the way to the master, that it's the things I want in mono, like stay in mono, right?
Two things I just want to add to this as well. So with that ozone imager, you'll see on the side there is a +1, a 0, and a -1. This is your phase meter. This is a correlation meter. +1 is good. -1 is fucking bad. It means you're out of phase. You're phasing. You're losing a lot of volume. Essentially, if they're in phase, they add up to essentially +1 dB is what it's trying to show you. So as you can see when Dread's track's playing, if you play your track, Dread, you'll see he's never dropped below 0, which means that he's perfectly in phase the whole time in his drop, which is a major key in a clean mixdown. You need to make sure that there's no phasing or anything like that. And the other thing I wanted to add as well is with the mono, the bass mono and stuff, be careful with using mono and bass mono. Bass mono is not always 100% true mono because it works on a hertz value. It works on a frequency value. So it's only going to make, for example, 120 hertz mono rather than the whole frequency mono. So just keep that in mind when using it. It is a useful tool because if you've got a sound that fills up a bit more of the frequency and you only want, for example, in another example, let's say I'm using it on a gun and I want, not a gun, on a sub, and my sub will have, some higher stuff in there. Not a lot, but just some fuzz that fills it out. That fuzz, I want to keep stereo. I don't want that whole thing mono sometimes. Sometimes I do, but most of the time I don't. So I'll bass mono at, the peak of where my sub is hitting. So 50 hertz or 60 hertz or wherever the fuck my bass is actually hitting. That's where bass mono comes in handy. But yes, sorry. I just wanted to add that in there. Because
and if anyone is, yeah, for sure. I actually would have probably forgotten about the phasing thing, because this is something I I figured out in my mixes like such a long time ago that I don't even look at it
Yeah.
as often. So I totally would have skipped over that. And then next to it here, you see this like little width knob. You can use
Yeah, yeah.
Imager to actually give a
Give
sound.
width.
Like sometimes I'll put this on basses and give it width or make it mono. You can use this to make a sound wide or mono.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm going to do that, especially like making it wide, I would also make sure I have a signal that is a strong mono as well, so you fill out that frequency. So like I have like that easy mid side EQ thing that I do is basically that, splitting the signal into a mono signal and like a side or a wide signal, and having both is important on your basses, so you fill out the whole stereo image. um yeah, and if anyone was curious why like this group isn't just mono again like it is on the sub, it's because I'm doing this little like trick where my turnarounds, right, have this like vocal fill in it, and they have some low end that I wanted to keep. Um, but I put them in my bass group. Um, this is something that Muerte showed me that he does every once in a while, just to add beef to these like sort of vocal fill things. But like, and this is gonna basically just be mono as it goes through this track anyways, but sometimes I don't know, this is just what I did. It probably won't make any difference if I do mono or bass mono. It doesn't really matter, I guess, but um I'm just doing it. um that's just layered on top of this whole turnaround thing like this, and I'm just layering it with this. It just felt good doing it like that. But yeah, anyways, but yeah, visualizing your mix is super important. So we covered showing our like what's being limited, and I can also show you like how would I do this. So like if I turned off my clippers and I turn this trim down to 0, this is going to be louder than what it was, but it's also going to feel off because it's going to be dipping a lot. Like this is like all that cutting, I just kind of don't want that in my mix. It's just cleaner to do that and then have a little trim on it. It just sounds better to me, at least. Maybe it's not much of a difference um to like the average listener, but I can definitely pick up on some differences there.
Yeah.
And I think it's important. And like clippers aren't like these, there isn't much like visually happening here, but like 2 times over sampling, just clipping it from going above 0. I have 2 because one of these is adding trim, which is just minus 0.3 dB on there. And then another clipper just for the sake of having it. Probably don't even need it, to be honest, but I just always have 2 because um, I don't want the clipper that's on the master having the whole chain of like groups slamming into it. So I have 2 working together to kind of alleviate the stress going through this one and this one.
Mm.
And I do that kind of like throughout my groups. Like the mids has a clipper on it. You can use anything. I use JSD clip because it helps with extreme amounts of distortion, which is usually what I'm always finding myself in, is like a lot of distortion. But you can also use a G clip as well.
Mm.
The mids, they go to the master stems. Master stems is clipped. There's also groups in here as well that are clipped all the way up. But the whole point of this master chain is like visualizing your mix. Super important.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, I think that covers my last thing. Oh yeah, and a sub check too. I had this like minimized. This is visualizing how loud my sub actually is. So let's dive into that super quick. If I solo my sub, we can see like, let's see what my sub is pushing, right? It should be about 0.
About. Over.
Yeah, a little peaking over 0. I just like my subs blasted like that.
Yeah.
This one's also, this sub is in C minor, which is pretty much is the lowest you can go for a sub.
Yeah.
Before it just starts to disappear in your mix. But this track was in C minor. I kept the sub in C minor. Usually I'm in D minor, but this one I just wanted to do something different. But I had to push it a bit so that you can actually hear it in the mix. But yeah, this is telling me how loud it is. If it so if I like take these and turn them down like 6 and take a look at the sub check. Oh, they're still pushing. I really have to go down on them, huh? Okay, we'll turn the gain down there. We'll turn the gain down here. I'm using G clip and a saturator to like turn it up. There we go. Now it's a -6 sub. That is just. This used to be the standard, like maybe 12 years ago.
Yeah.
But sound systems have evolved so much to be able to take much louder mixes and stuff like that. That most people will probably tell most other people to push for like a -1. I was told when I started making to aim for a -1, and a few times I've been told that, oh, your sub's hitting 0, that's too loud. Use your ear. If the sub being at 0 is too loud for your mix, you'll hear it, turn it down. If -1 is too quiet for your mix, put it to 0. Should help. Or fuck it, go above 0 if you want to. I'm sure Subtronics does, right? Or like Virtual Riot, like or Skrillex.
There's no rules.
Right. There really isn't any rules. There are some things that you like you want to do. But like generally speaking, like -1, like I wouldn't suggest like a -2 on a rhythm track or even a tear out track, especially like a tear out track, which is going to be utilizing a lot of distortion to really push its lufs really high above like what most would be considered standard. So like most people would probably say a rhythm track would sit at -3 at its loudest, but a tear out track would definitely be like -2 to -1.
Yeah.
So obviously, if you're pushing a tear out track to -1, you don't want your sub to be at like a -2 dB, because then the sub's going to be too quiet. It's going to disappear. So you want to kind of match that. But sub check, I have it here. You can just copy these settings on a spectrum analyzer, and it'll just show you the sub frequency and show you how loud your sub is. So if you're looking at your sub and it's playing, and you're like, damn, sub's too quiet, like just bring it up. Or if it's too loud, bring it down, and you'll see it right here. But yeah, that's visualizing your mix
Sick.
with Dreadful, super important. And that's my last tip. I ain't got anything else tip wise tonight.
I got one last tip to give.
All right, awesome.
And yeah, this is one that I use a lot. So let's just turn all these off.
Yeah, I too also do this.
So usually this will be off, right? So your Ableton will look like this. You have your track, and let's say we've been working on it, and this is what we've done so far. We put everything in. Me personally, I fucking hate it when everything is perfectly on grid. We are humans, we're not a robot. We shouldn't enjoy exactly perfect robot fucking sounds where everything's perfectly on grid every single time. So I like to come down to the side here and hit this little D. You get all these little modes. These are all your different settings. So you've got your center returns, your return track at the bottom, your mixer, and all of your mixing abilities. So your panning, your volume, center return volume, and this is your sample delay rate. So this is the fucking sauce, my friends. This right here is my pretty boy swag. This is what I do on all of my tracks. I wake up out of bed and I put my swag on. I put my 50 millisecond delay on just to start it. And let's just hear the difference straight up. So it's already giving it that more delay. My signature thing, I like to do this a lot, is 90. Anywhere from 90 to 110 is usually my kind of signature thing that I've been doing a lot for probably well over a year now. I've been doing 90, 110. But yeah, so let's push it up to 90 again and let's see what happens. Alright, so now it sounds really weird still, and that's because the hats are not delayed as well. So hats are usually a backing for your synths. So this is where sometimes if you're smart, this is where your high end from your basses can come. So let's delay this again, and let's see what it sounds like. It's got that real swing to it. The vocal to me still sounds off. So this is another thing that you can delay and add and make it, more, human feel. More human feel is the word I'm essentially going to say. So sometimes it might not always work. So sometimes you've got to dial it back and just to find where it sits with the system. So 50 milliseconds for me seems to sit with my 90 millisecond delay. There's probably some sort of trimming I've got to do for this. It's not exactly on grid from where he says hey, but that's because it's a human voice. So if I zoom in on this, yeah, we're slightly off. So if I was to trim this, and let's pull this back here and we go back to 90, we copy this one over to the other ones, it should now be on time essentially. So this really works when you're, on grid. When you're off grid, it kind of throws everything out. Sometimes people like to, manually go in and then shift them, off grid, 1 or 2 kind of like. But to me, I prefer to do it this way. It's a lot easier to manage. You don't have to go in and individually shift, different channels, different samples. You can just do it on the side here. It's so much quicker and easier. So just for funsies and fuck around sake, let's just put these at 110 real quick. And the sub. Unfortunately, Ableton has not added the feature to be able to multi-select across groups, only certain channels, and then like do the different changes and stuff. But yeah, anyway. Dawson. And the final tip, very final tip to round out this whole stream: resample, resample, resample. Resampling is a huge thing that you can do to level up your, your sounds from samples essentially. So you go into an audio track, a fresh audio track. Let's just get it'll be on exit in. Don't worry about that. Go down to resampling. Select, you want auto, and then you want to hit the record button here. Let's solo the track that you want to record, and then come up to the top here and press record. Alright, so we've got ourselves that. So what I'm going to do is go down here, and I'm going to change the channel that we're recording from now. And so we've got our bounced out audio here. Let's just change this slightly so you know it's kind of different to what it was. So let's go like 1/8. And let's change the pitch. And let's just add a chorus real quick, just for rushing around set purposes, just to quickly show you guys. Alright, so now we resample, right? You resample. Alright, so you've got that. Let's chuck this in here, and let's just resample again. And then resample again. And so now all of a sudden we've got a half note that's now turned into a sustain that I can realistically just quickly put a grain delay on, turn the sync down. Wait. So that sustain in 30 seconds came from this gun. And that's the power of resampling. And that goes with fucking anything, bro. Like, you can turn this now, put this in here, solo this, resample. Oh, wait, no, whoops. Dickhead, you need to put it in here. No, put this one on here. The grain delay needs to go on the channel that you're resampling. My bad, sorry. Now you go. So now we've got that, and we can chuck this in here. And if we put the grain delay back onto this, and then we resample once more. And now we've got this sound. Get an EQ on that, tame up the high end a little bit. Tame up the low end. And that's a sustain that I would probably use in a drop like this. So let's just chuck this here. And where's the snare? Let's have it hit on the snare. And we'll have it come in. Alright, and let's just hear it. And so, obviously, more sound design is required with that. You know, you go in here, you can fucking do some pitch automation, the gain, transposition, sorry. Make it go up, kind of thing, and then down so it climbs. But it needs to be on complex, sorry, complex pro for that to happen. Wait. And so that sustain took me, what, all of 10 minutes to come up with from literally a gun. And so you can take this and fucking go nuts with it, you know. Turn that gun into a fucking quarter note if you want it. I don't give a fuck. You do whatever the fuck you want. Like, yeah. Endless possibilities. But yeah, that's gonna wrap up this tips and tricks stream. We'll probably be doing these a lot more as well, just to give you guys a few little ideas and some inspiration of what you can do with your tracks, to see, you know, how far you can take things and how you can get to the level you want to be at. Yeah, thanks for joining us. Yeah, Dred, did you want to say any final words?
Say any funny words?
Final
No,
words.
not. Oh, final. Well, I guess that was just hilarious, wasn't it? Bro, I swear to God, it sounded like you said any funny words. I was like, no.
Give me all the funny words you got to say.
Any final words? Don't make it sound like I'm being executed, bro.
What is your last words?
No. My last words. Nothing much, man. Just I hope everyone enjoyed, and I hope everyone learned something from this. Yeah, we'll definitely be coming back with more videos and tutorials. So keep an eye out. We'll definitely have other guests. Probably it more than likely won't be me next time, but the next time that a tutorial does come out, we'll have other guests from here at Malefic coming in and sharing their knowledge and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I had a great time. I love teaching. I think I definitely gave a lot of really good tips,
For sure.
and I think you did too, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, awesome. I think everything went just as planned. So that's a wrap.
Yeah, boy. Make sure you check out Dred's new track that just dropped on SoundCloud. His EP
Yep,
comes
that's
out
right.
next week. Dubstep is Dreadful EP premiere will be live on the Discord Malefic premiere stage. There is an event in the Discord already for it. Jump in the Discord, click interested. It's going to be fun. We're going to do a whole bunch of things, including a full visual premiere of Dred's EP, and Dred will be doing a track breakdown of the 3 tracks in the EP live in the Discord, so you guys can kind of ask some
That's right.
questions and he will answer them. And yeah, so
Yeah,
fucking
and also for by next week he means June 30th for anybody
yeah,
who's
sorry,
watching
yes,
the VOD or like
yes,
or watching this
June
whenever
30th,
June 30th.
12.
I'll be the EP will be out and I'll be doing track breakdown and on another stream. I think
Yeah.
we're gonna stream it, right? It's gonna be streamed and we'll also be in the Discord for anyone that actually just wants to come in the Discord and just
Yeah,
ask questions or hang out or whatever.
yeah, we should be able to, yeah.
So yeah. Awesome. Perfect.
Alright.
Yep.
Easy. Well, yeah, we'll see you on the next stream, whenever we're doing. Jump in the Discord to stay notified. Follow us on all our socials, and yeah, we'll see you next time. See you guys.
Awesome. Peace.